Good evening and welcome to another Mothman Podcast. We are your number one source for sci-fi paranormal podcasts. Also be listening for podcasts from Moth and Flame. You'll be hearing about hypnotherapy and mediumship.
And also, please like and subscribe and comment on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Instagram, Twitter, and more. And you can find out a lot more about our services on mothmanpodcast.com.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, I'm Darrell. Here in the studio with me is...
I'm Amanda.
And Bruce is here.
Hey, everybody. We're hoping you're having a good week. We thought we'd start off with our podcast tonight, giving some stories. You know, we always ask you to call in or send us an email with some stories of some of your paranormal activity or something that's happened in your life. And we've been receiving some, and we're going to start off tonight with some of those episodes. And I think Amanda's going to start off with one of hers.
Yeah, this one is from a friend of mine, and we'll call her Sandy. She didn't want her name given out because she is a professional. And I met her when we were both studying for our master's in a class on esoteric religions, which kind of started me on a lot of my paranormal interests. And I had asked her, she works for hospice as a social worker that kind of helps out the families as they're going through the death process. And I asked her, have you ever had any weird experiences or seen a ghost in the room or anything? And she said, no, but I did have one really creepy experience. And she told me this story. So, basically what happened, this happened in Visalia, California, which is just outside of Fresno. And she was called out to the home of an elderly man who was in hospice care, and he was staying in his home. He wanted to die at home. And he lived with his wife of 40 years. And his son had come over, and they were going to discuss the preparations, how to prepare paperwork, and what would happen at the time of his death. And Sandy, she's a Christian and goes to church and everything. And she said when she walked in the door, she was just immediately uncomfortable because all over the walls there were upside down crosses and pentagrams. And she said there were even some swastikas and some framed images of satanic creatures. And yeah. And she just kind of was staring at these pictures all over the walls. And the wife said, I'm sorry if that makes you uneasy or uncomfortable, but we're Satanists and we have been for many years, and that's not going to change. And so Sandy's very professional. She had a job to do. So she went ahead with helping the family with all their preparations and what kind of phone calls they need to make. And then as she was leaving, she said, so the next time you guys see me will be when your husband passes away, and you'll need to call the funeral home and then call me immediately, and I will come straight out and we'll help you through this. So she left. So a couple of weeks later, she gets the call the man had passed away. So she heads out to the house. She was there pretty quick, and she actually got there before the funeral home did. So the wife answered the door, and she was just shaking and nervous, but she didn't seem like sad and grieving. And then the son was also there, and he was also like really jumpy and, just a nervous wreck. And Sandy asked how they were doing, if they were okay. And the wife said, you've got to come see. He died during the night, and it's been awful. She said, we've been hearing all sorts of noises and scratching and seeing shadows, and you got to see his eyes. And Sandy said, well, what's wrong with his eyes? And the wife said, just please come see, please come look. And so they walked back to the bedroom, and the body was laid out on the bed. And she said he looked like he was just sleeping with the covers pulled up to his chest, but he had sunglasses on, which is really, really strange. And Sandy said, well, what's with the sunglasses? And the wife said, well, his eyes, they won't stop looking at us. And she said, we tried to close his eyes several times, and they just keep popping open, and he's staring right at you. And Sandy walked over toward the bed, and the wife starts yelling, don't take him off. And so she just left it. And she said, I can't wait till the funeral home gets here because his eyes, and she said, we saw shadows all night long and heard all these noises, and his eyes just won't close. And the son said, yeah, I was here all night and we're just scared to death. And she said that they were almost hysterical. So Sandy took the family back into the living room, and they waited for the funeral home to get there. The funeral home gets there, and the wife wouldn't even let them take the sunglasses off on the way out. And Sandy said that was the only time in all of her working with hospice, and all she does every day is deal with people who are dying. And she said she has never felt a strange, like creepy presence that she felt in the home like she did that night. So she's still a social worker, and she still does this job, and that's just the oddest situation she's ever been in.
So the family was experiencing like paranormal activity, like as the father was passing.
Yes, he was passing, and then immediately after he passed, and as far as I know, all night until Sandy got there that morning.
So that's some of that black spirit we talk about every
Yeah,
That's some creepy stuff.
I mean, if you're a Satanist, you're not exactly expecting a guardian angel to come sweep you to heaven.
Exactly.
It's kind of the
Could have
opposite.
been the
You're
team of demons.
Yeah, it's kind of like that scene in Ghost where the demons come and drag the bad guy away.
Yeah, well,
oh my gosh.
I'd like to heard about the funeral. I mean,
I know. What was the funeral like?
$10 says he had sunglasses on.
Or they didn't open the
Closed
casket.
casket.
Yeah, closed casket. Yeah, a picture of him or something on top of
Yeah.
it. But we want to thank you for sending that story over to Amanda, and hopefully everybody out there really enjoyed this story. This next story is coming to you from Bruce, and it was coming from one of our listeners who we'd met, and I think Bruce met him and talked to him at a gathering we were at this past weekend. I'll let Bruce explain that to you.
Yeah, we were at the Clemens Monster Dash and Goblin Hop this past weekend, which thank you to the Village of Clemens for having us. That was fantastic. We had a great time. While we were there, we were handing out business cards and whatnot, and this gentleman comes up to me, and he was Russian. I mean, you could tell English was his second language. Mm-hmm. Very nice gentleman. And I was telling him, hey, if you want to share your story, you email us, and then we'll try to get your story out there. And sure enough, yesterday he emailed us. Right. So I'm going to read what he wrote. He goes, I came by your booth at the Goblin Hop in Clemens. I spoke with Bruce and said I will email you my story. Forgive me because my English is not so good to write, so my son's going to help me. He's 12, and he was born in New York. I was born in Russia. And his story goes as follows. When I was a little boy in Russia, in the summer, I went to visit my grandmother in the Ural Mountains because my mother and father both worked. My grandmother's house was about 120 years old, and it had been in the family for many years. He goes, it was a very creepy old house, but it had a very friendly vibe because my grandmother was always cooking and making pies and cookies, and he said and he always had like fond memories of the house. And he said his grandmother had an old dog that she had since he was a puppy, and his name was Laika. And Laika was a big brown dog that when he was a child, the dog was already kind of old when he was young. And he said the dog was old and slow, but he would always stay with his right next to his grandmother. The dog never left her side. And he said if she was in the garden, he was with her. If she was in the kitchen, she made a bed near the fireplace. She would always feed him pieces of food when she cooked, and he was just a happy old dog. One summer, he went to stay with his grandmother, and he asked, where's Laika? And she started to tear up and cry, and she was sad and said that Laika had died in that winter. And she told him that he was very old and sick, and it was better because he was in heaven with his grandfather now. And he said that he cried with his grandma, and they hugged, had their little family moment.
Aww.
He goes, and then sometimes when the house was quiet that summer, I could hear what sounded like Laika's toenails on the wood floor. Click, click, click. He goes, sometimes I'd feel something brush past my legs like fur. And he goes, and it would feel like Laika's tail, swinging by his leg. Mm-hmm. He goes, but then I remembered Laika's not here anymore, so I had to be imagining it. He goes, then one night I couldn't sleep, and I was laying in my bed with the door open and the hallway light was on. Grandmother had gone to bed because she usually went to bed early, and I could hear her snoring. I was looking in the hallway thinking about how I'd go, thinking about going fishing the next day. And then I saw it. I watched Leica walk right past my door. I thought I must be asleep, but I wasn't. I got out of bed and looked down the hall, and I could still see Leica walking down the hall, but I could see right through him, and I could see the wall on the other side of him. He walked down the hall, and he walked into my grandmother's bedroom, and I could hear him jump on the bed. I ran into my grandmother's bedroom, and without thinking, I turned the lights on. My grandmother woke up, and she goes, "Savros, what are you doing?" I looked and looked around the room for Leica, and I couldn't talk. My grandmother said, "Savros, are you going crazy? What are you doing?" He goes, "Grandma, I just saw Leica come in here." And he goes, "I saw him, Grandma. I know I saw him, and I could see through him." And the grandmother laughed a little bit, and she said, "I've seen Leica a few times, too, since last winter." She said she thinks that Leica does not know he's dead, and he still stays by her side. She says, "It's okay, Savros. Just say hello to Leica when you see him and tell him we still love him." I had never seen Leica again since that summer, but this one time seeing my grandmother's old dog made me think that even dogs have a soul, and we must always be kind to our animals.
That almost made me tear up. That's so sweet.
We had another one. I can't locate it right now. I did find one that come in from a viewer that stated that she wanted to tell a story when she was a teenager, and she didn't want her name to be mentioned either. So we'll call her Mary. Okay, having a merry good time, right? But Mary stated when she was a teenager, she used to do a lot of babysitting, and she did sitting for families in Newport Beach, California, which is a very, I guess,
it's very she
expensive area.
Yeah, my ex-husband moved there.
Okay. Oh, we won't go that way. That's scary enough right there. The family is wealthy and had a very large house, and she said it's the kind of house with seriously a lot of rooms. So anyway, the parents are going out for dinner one night. And she's babysitting. The father tells her that please stay in this one room because he didn't want her wandering all over the house and this sort of thing. So the parents take off, and soon she gets the kids into bed and goes to the room to watch TV. She tries watching TV, but she is disturbed by a clown statue in the corner of the room. She tries to ignore it for as long as possible, but it started freaking her out so much that she couldn't handle it. She
got to see it, and it's already freaked me out.
She called the father and asked, "Hey, the kids are in bed, but if it's okay, I'd like to switch rooms. The clown statue is really creeping me out." The father became quiet, and then he got very serious and said, "Get the kids, go next door and call 911. She asked, "What's going on?" He responded, "Just go next door once you get the kids and call 911. So she gets the kids and goes to the door and calls the police. When the police, then she calls the father back and says, "What's really going on here?" He says, "We don't own a clown statue."
Oh my God.
And he responded that his kids had been telling him that they were afraid this clown had been watching them, but they kind of blew it off because they thought it was just their imagination or they were dreaming. So anyway, the police arrive. They go next door. They can't find a clown. And within 2 weeks, they put their house on the market and sold it.
Oh, my God.
And moved away. But she said that was the scariest thing that ever happened to her in her life.
Oh, wow.
So some stranger in a clown costume was breaking into their house and staring at their kids.
Whatever.
That's scarier than any ghost I could ever think of.
I know, right?
So anyway,
that's a
thank
creeper.
you for sharing your frightening story with us. So if there's anybody else out there with a story, I sure would like for you to email us or call us, and we'll even let you be on the air, and you can tell your own story over the air if you want to.
Yeah, these are great. Send them in.
Speaking of which, I have a couple updates on what happened.
Oh yeah, where's your house, right?
Yeah. 2 different times in the last month, I have ordered pizza or Chinese. And
now, you got to realize Bruce is single and he doesn't like to cook, so he calls out a lot.
well, I can cook. It's just cooking for one and then washing the dishes.
It is. It's hard.
And you waste more than
you do
when you cook for one.
Right, that's true.
But
and Chinese is good.
But like 2 different delivery drivers have come to my home, and both of them have said that, like, in the attic space above my garage, like as soon as you pull into my driveway, they have seen a little boy looking out the window at them. And I am the only person that lives in my house.
Except for the little boy who's looking out your window.
I mean, granted, we've done investigations in my house.
Yeah, and your house does have some paranormal activity in it.
And which, if that wasn't bad enough, about a week and a half ago, I was downstairs watching TV, and this was about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And the computer upstairs, where I do all the video editing for our paranormal investigation videos, the computer was on, and I had a YouTube video that I had paused, and I was going to go back and finish it after I watched my show.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like, the video just starts playing full blast volume out of nowhere. And
that's a click someone has to make.
You would have to move the mouse to get it out of sleep mode, and then click on the video to get
click on that little arrow.
Yeah, to get it to play.
That's not accidental.
And this video just starts going at like I said, and the volume, like I had the volume set,
Yeah, for when you're sitting there.
Yeah, not that loud. And this thing was at full maximum volume.
Oh my God,
loud, and it was creepy.
So when they see this little boy, is it daylight or is it nighttime?
Both times it was daytime. It was like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. The pizza delivery guy, that was like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. The Chinese guy was probably about 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Okay,
but it was
still light.
But the sun was still out.
Okay, I left your house the other night, and I spent a long time sitting in your driveway just staring at
that. That's a weird looking window. You get kind of a weird vibe looking at it.
But anyway, and let me explain too. It's an unfinished room above his garage. He's going to turn it into a kind of a studio one of these days. But so he's been up there doing construction in that room. But you never had any problems while you were doing the construction or anything?
No, nothing like that. I mean,
but you live next to that graveyard, and this is my theory, is that you've got people wandering in and out constantly.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
I don't think it's like
you have a welcome mat.
One or two that live, right?
Because the
ghosts this way.
Because the activity is not consistent.
And it's not a consistent one type of ghost or one ghost. It's different.
Have you mentioned any of this to your neighbors? Is any of your neighbors complaining about the same things?
My neighbor to the right of me, the one closer to the main road.
Okay.
She said her daughter.
That's right, facing your house. Okay.
Yeah, she said that her daughter's experienced stuff and heard noises and whatnot, but. I'm not going to say my neighbor.
Right, don't say their name.
But she doesn't want to acknowledge that kind of stuff because it freaks her out. She scares easy. But her daughter, is constantly asking me about paranormal stuff because she's experiencing it.
Right. Mm-hmm. And, it's just like anything else. There's a lot of people that see things and they don't want to see it, and so it never really happens. They're in denial.
They're just ignoring it.
So things like this happen all the time where people are in denial. But the guy was not really looking for paranormal stuff. He's just asking about the kid in the attic, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. He legitimately thought I had a kid. He goes, "Oh, I was expecting your son to run down from upstairs to come to the door. I didn't realize you were going to answer the door so quickly."
You tell him, if somebody does run down there, don't give him my pizza.
Especially if you can see through them.
Well, at first I was like, what are you talking about, my son?
Yeah.
He goes, the boy in the window. I'm like, what boy?
Window?
In what window? I was like, I'm the only one here. And then he just kind of, his eyes got big and he got real quiet and he goes, He's like, here's your food.
I gotta go.
He didn't say, yeah, he
gotta run.
He didn't say much of anything. He just handed me a food. He looked like he had, he kind of turned pale after.
I am definitely going to sit in your driveway. I'm going over there, even if you're not home. If you see me sitting in your driveway,
we've got
neighbors
stuff
are
on the
going to start
SLS
calling the
camera.
cops.
I'm going to have my camera ready. I want a snapshot of this thing.
We've caught stuff on the SLS in the house. We have yet to catch an actual full body apparition on camera.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm waiting for one of our viewers who states that for the first time that I've heard about this, he has a video or a snapshot of a guy who he sees in the window, and the guy sticks his hand out.
Oh my gosh!
The shadow figure sticks his hand out the window, and he supposedly took a shot of this.
Oh,
now I'm
so
waiting
weird.
to get that shot, and it'll be on our YouTube channel if I get it.
I should try to do the Donna Wagner selfie thing, like what she did.
Yeah,
at the
there
time.
you go.
Hey, like from my driveway, and try to see if I can get something.
I'm gonna take a picture if I can find it in your driveway.
I'm working on kind of a long-term thing, kind of halfway on my own, about that haunted house I was telling you about that we lived in when I was younger.
Yeah, that's here in Winston.
I'm telling you,
Yeah.
we should rent it for a month.
I'm
and just
telling you,
record.
I found out that the lady my parents bought it from grew up there. So I want to go over and maybe how you doing, and haven't seen you in 20 years. But when we lived there, this is something my entire family experienced one time. We were all sitting, and I was like 15, 16 years old, and my sisters are younger. And we were all in this, it's got 2 parlor rooms because the house was built in the 1880s. The front 2 rooms are 2 parlor rooms. Then there's 2 bedrooms and a kitchen behind all of that. And the parlor room we were using as a TV room, and we were all in there watching something. And we hear this strange laugh that goes, and it did it about 3 times. And my dad was like, "What is that?" And he went and investigated to see what was going on. And he found my little sister's, my baby sister, she was 4 or so at the time. Her doll had, apparently the batteries were winding down. And for some reason it just set off and started this weird, creepy laughter thing. And there was all kinds of weird stuff that happened in that house. He's seen pictures of it. I didn't tell him that was the house I lived in. I just said, "Bruce, look at this house. What kind of vibe do you get off of it?"
Well, remember I told you, I'm like, 2 of these pictures have orbs in them.
Yeah.
And it's listed on the real estate site. And in 2 different bedroom shots, you can clearly see orbs in the picture. I was like,
it's a creepy house.
I was like, man, in every room, even though no matter how brightly colored it is, it always looks dark and dim. Like there's some type
there's something
heavy just kind of weighing on these pictures. And
I had a bat fall on my head in that house.
Is somebody living in the house now?
It's rented out. The people who bought it have never lived in it other than 2 months. It rents out, and it usually rents for about a year, and then the people leave. And this has happened over and over.
I would love to
over.
talk to the people who just left.
I know.
Like I said, it'd be cool if we could just go in there for like a month and just record.
And
you could get so much data out of that.
I won't tell the street that it's on, but the address was 1666, 1666. The people who bought it from us went to the city and had the address changed.
Oh, I would have, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't told Bruce about it, but be sure to listen in next. There will be a podcast next Monday night, and we've made arrangements with the old Salisbury Road lady who's Sherry, and Sherry is she's babysitting, and she has this very young girl who has seen the entities herself and spoken to the entities and telling Sherry about it, and we're going to interview
and
Sherry.
Sherry taped it, right?
Yes, she's got some tapes on the interview with the little girl, and so that's going to be next Monday night. Bruce, make your calendar available for next Monday night.
You remember how I was asking Donna, like when she said she had a little girl ghost, I was asking like if like any of her children had made contact,
right?
Because children can see these things, and it seems like children's spirits will, interact and try to play with the human children.
We're going to have a whole series on that because that's my little cup of tea.
Yeah.
I love the children's stories, and I love Jim Tucker, who the Professor Tucker.
There's some new stuff that's come out with him.
So his research.
He's done some lectures lately.
Yeah, I would love to go to one of his lectures if I could ever find out where one's going to be.
Yeah.
And it was kind of interesting you talking about that doll with the batteries winding down. A video I put on my personal YouTube channel about 4 or 5 years ago at my cousin's house. His house is super haunted. He had a flashlight where the battery was completely dead. You could click it and it wouldn't turn on. You set it on the coffee table and you would say, if anyone's here, turn that on. We turn all the lights off, and clearly you can see the flashlight turn on.
Oh my God.
And this did it, and it did it multiple times. And in the video, while I was recording on my cell phone, you could see orbs flying around the room. And I heard, I caught a breath into my phone camera. And we were,
I guess they draw energy; they can give energy too.
Yeah, well, it drained my cousin's stepson's Nintendo DS battery completely.
Oh, yeah,
he just pulled it off the charger.
We've had enough experience with draining a battery, so
I was going to use that microphone you let me borrow.
Yeah,
and I was going to take it up to the cemetery, and this was while you were out of the country, and I had to text Bruce and say, "Do you have a charger for this?" Because you had a full charge on it when you gave it to me.
Right.
We went to Donna's house. Dead battery.
Yep, it happens to us a lot.
Yeah.
So you'll notice when I travel, I travel with a whole bunch of batteries in my bag.
Yep.
But they could drain my good.
They
batteries,
could drain the extra ones.
So it is what it is.
Yeah.
Now you told me a story. You shot some pictures in your bedroom.
Yeah, with a little Polaroid.
Yeah, and about is it your cousin?
It's my cousin.
Yeah.
He will not leave me alone.
Yeah, I think he's still. He's got some mental problems on top of that, and he's dead with still mental problems.
He did some, let's just say, really bad stuff when he was 16, 17 years old. And he ended up passing away in a car accident. It was horrific. And I remember at the time, I only felt relief, and I felt guilty that I was happy he was dead. And, I'm 12 years old and confused, but I dealt with it, saw a psychiatrist over everything, and, I moved on. But when I moved into my parents' house, what was that, 2 years ago or so?
Yeah.
My aunt came over, and I don't get along with her too well, but she walked in the house, and I clearly saw him walking in behind her. And I had literally moved in that morning, and so I hadn't saged the room or anything. So I immediately threw salt down on the floor. I saged my room, and I was like, no, you can't. And so my mom, of course, would not want salt on the inside of the bedroom. So I thought, I'll sage the outside windowsills. So I went around the front of the house, and I was saging, and I saw my grandmother, and I see my grandmother a lot. And my cousin was standing behind her, and she said, "You need to give him a minute. He just wants to say something." And he was dressed like he always wore just t-shirts and jeans, but he was dressed in like a long sleeve button down shirt and nice pants and everything. And I was like,
is that what he was buried in?
I don't know, because it was a closed casket.
Okay.
Sure. But she said, "You need to give him a minute." And I said, "No, I don't want to talk to him. I don't want anything to do with him." And he said, "But I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." And I said, "I don't care. You really screwed up my life. Get out of here." And he had this weird thing when he was alive, where he would hide in closets and watch the female girls in the house undressing. And so I'm convinced that, because my door to the closet's latch. You push them and there's magnets and they stick and they click closed. But this closet keeps opening, and it's not like there's any weight on the door. There's nothing, and I'm closing it constantly. I sage inside that closet almost every day. And I'm like, "You need to leave me alone." But it seems like sometimes it's worse than other times. And right now the closet door just keeps opening. And I caught 2 orbs coming out of the closet.
Trick of the trade: if you don't want to put salt across, the floor in front of the door, do it across the top of the.
Ooh,
the
that's a good
molding.
idea.
Yeah,
on the inside, so you.
I'm gonna do that tonight.
On the top of the crown molding of the door.
So nobody sees it.
Because I closed it again today, and
make sure you do your windows too.
Yeah, and I just walked out of the room for 2 or 3 minutes, and I come back and it's cracked open again, and I'm just like, I have to put something in front of it.
Take a scrunchie or hair tie to hold it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Well, guys, it's been fun.
Yeah, some nice creepy stories for Halloween, and I love that Leica story. I mean, that just that's heartwarming.
So, big thank you to Savros for sharing that story. That was fantastic.
Thank you, Savros. That was great.
Everybody, we enjoyed it. We hope you guys did too. And until next time, this is Darrell
and Amanda
and Bruce
saying good night. Thank you.
Just sitting here talking.
And good night from Mothman Podcast. We hope you enjoyed tonight's episode.
And don't forget, like, subscribe, and comment on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Instagram, Twitter, and more. And take a look at our website, mothmanpodcast.com, to find out more about our services.